I go on the first post I read. We're 15 hours into our first campaign, our first scenario,
No.
and we're about halfway done. I said, okay,
Wow.
obviously I'm doing something wrong. So this game is really about surviving, going out and hunting food. When you hunt for food, you get to replenish basically your life or your card deck, and that's how you lose when that deck runs out, basically, or you have a chance to lose. Okay. So we didn't even know about hunting because we were just trying to beeline towards the X. So you have to look for like animal tracks on cards, and then there might be a hidden number, and now you found a spot where you can hunt animals.
Is it like literally hidden on it, like kind of like the
Yes, yeah. So it's pretty cool. So now it's a whole extra element. All these different things, they really thought well when they designed this game. So that's what we're playing. I think we've put 2 episodes up there right now of our playthroughs. I think we're about maybe 2.5 hours in. So that's what Andrea and I are doing. Last night, our buddy Ricky and I, we played Star Wars Rebellion. Chris, I know you've played that game with us. And this is more of the overall cinematic type large-scale war between the Rebels and the Imperials. Basically, the Rebels pick a planet and they hide their base, and the Imperials need to find them and blow up their base.
So is this the one with the miniatures?
There
with
are
the figurines that you have.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is this the one with like the figurines that you have?
No, that's a different game. That's more of like a Descent version.
Okay.
This is more of like a one-on-one Risk type maybe game.
Okay.
No, I thought this was like a team game.
Well, we play it as teams.
Okay.
Because you have the option to, because we have.
Well, there's miniatures in it, isn't there? Like you have the ships and stuff.
You have the little ships. Okay.
Yeah, little ships.
Okay, yeah.
Well, what we did was last night was different because I picked up the expansion. The expansion came out, so we tried that, and it was called Rise of the Rebellion. So this kind of takes place during Rogue One. So it's like the Death Star just got built. You have all new characters. And we taped that, so that will be out in a few days, so you'll be able to see that. Cool. It was really cool. Rick and I would play, and then we would each go do our own interview, and we would talk about what we thought the other person was thinking, because you're trying to outsmart them. And so those are the 2 games that we're currently playing here at Hit Points Gaming. But I want to turn it over, and let's kind of start off by, what do you remember growing up as your favorite board games, or what kind of got you into, I guess, the board game hobby when you were younger?
Well, if I could say what it would be like most kids, where you got board games for Christmas. You know what I mean? You got board games for Christmas. It wasn't just video games back then. Or you'd be watching Nickelodeon and you would see this crazy 80s action commercial for this game where people are flying all over the place and really, you're like, man, I need to have that. And you open it up and it sucks type of thing. But I would say like the games that I remember loving the most, and some that I can even still play till this day, is Omega Virus. For me, is easily the greatest board game ever created, ever. It was one of the first ones that I remember that had a speaker, so the guy talked to you. It had like voice samples and stuff, and the way the game was you had to basically find the bad guy in these rooms based off of listening to him and kill him. And the winner of the game, you could fight each other, but the winner of the game is the person who found him and kill him. So it was competitive and cooperative at the same time. Then after that, like Torpedo Run for me was huge, but that's not, I kind of put that in a different tier. Like Torpedo Run, Crossfire, Weapons and Warriors, that's the difference between like an RPG and an action RPG. You know what I mean? Like Final Fantasy versus Zelda. Mm-hmm. So I would put that like as an action board game. And I love Torpedo Run. That's where you had to blow up the suds and you shot little discs across like a mat.
Do you still have that? Does anyone have that?
I have it downstairs.
Corey's got it, man. And
we're talking about it.
That thing was a pain to set up, to all the rubber bands and stuff to make stuff go flying. Then I remember I loved Loopin' Louie a ton.
I was just thinking of that right now.
I love Loopin' Louie. It was a little plane that went around in a circle, and you had a little paddle to hit to knock the plane up so it didn't hit your chickens. And once you got dumb good at it, you could hit it so it would go over the next person's thing, so they couldn't hit it with the paddle, and it would land right on the chicken. And we got way too competitive with that game on my street, by the way, playing Loop and Louie. Way too competitive. But that's really it for me. I mean, I always liked board games. The reason why I don't play them so much now is because, like, I'm not a big dice roller. I like to have control. Now, a dice roll can add a ton of excitement to a board game, I will admit. But, man, I'm such a crappy dice roller that, like, when it comes down to the final moment and I need a 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, I get the 1 every time.
Corey's good at that, too.
And it sucks, man. And Corey has showed me a ton of great games that I have no doubt fallen in love with, man. Time Stories and Twilight Imperium, stuff like that. That's the kind of stuff that I love to play. I'm not into the big, well, besides Time Stories, but I'm not into the big card-based ones so much. I don't find those as fun as moving a character across a board with dice. But that's kind of like where I got my start, man. Just those old games that everybody kind of knows, and I didn't start playing board games again until until I found that you guys did. Chris?
Yeah, no, I'm exactly the same. We didn't have Loop and Louie. We had the Back Off Buzzard game. Very similar. There were so many different kinds. But I wouldn't even call these board games back then. We all played Mousetrap, and everyone played the game wrong. No one actually played it, I don't think.
No, you just set it up and tried to get
it. Yeah, you just set it up and knock it down. Monopoly, like Sorry, Life. I guess Those are really light board games. I guess what's really cool...
I would say Monopoly is definitely a board game. It's competitive. It's Life is.
Well, I'll chime in here. Back then, and if you talk to anyone outside of, I guess, this knowledge of the board games out there, anyone on the street, they're going to tell you Monopoly, Sorry, all those games.
Right, those count.
And that's where a lot of people's knowledge of board games end. Right. They have no idea that there's this whole other world out there. And honestly, I didn't either up until a few years ago when I started. I think Settlers of Catan was the first game that kind of got me into this whole extra hobby of different mechanics and whatnot. And I would say this is maybe about, 7 years ago. I think we started getting back into board games at a whole new level. And then since then, obviously, things have taken off. But yeah, we all started with Monopoly and whatnot. And I know, Chris, you still had probably another one or two to say.
I was just saying, yes, they are technically board games, but you said it exactly. When we were younger, that's what a board game was.
Right.
It's really cool that it's evolved into these much deeper, grander games. And not all games are going to be, like Twilight Imperium, but there are games that are out there that are not as in depth, but still really good. Like, being like a father now. I want to have some cool board games, not Chutes and Ladders, but something else that's out there that really uses... There's so many people making board games now that can really teach people how to play or, things, U.S. history, stuff like that. So it's going to be a lot more fun as an older person who's played all these crappy board games and these newer board games, to play them with someone else who's like my kid, who's, to teach them how to do things. Right. It's not going to be... learning the Constitution, this board game, it's really just, boring. Maybe there's someone else who's going to make something cooler, more fun, more, deeper rule sets. And that's kind of where I really like the evolution of where board games have become, the past few years.
I think overall now board games just have a ton, like even competitive, because Monopoly is technically competitive. You're just landing on spaces, and you can have a plan. But now the planning is much more of, I'm going to do these things in this order to accomplish this goal, as opposed to like, okay, I'm going to, I hope to land on these spaces to get these properties and hope other people do.
Right.
And I think it's insane, some of the different board games that are out there. I know we played a couple that I can't even name, but there was one where there was like a mountain in the middle and you had to go around kind of RPG style and you could kill each other. And that game was, it's great, man. I think most people don't know about that stuff, or they choose not to be involved because they're too cool for it at that point. If you ever mention Dungeons and Dragons around the crowd, like, oh no, but when in reality, Dungeons and Dragons is a fantastic game. It's a fantastic game where you create a character and you literally play through a campaign, which those same people do in video games all day long.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, I would have to say, you know, whenever I mention, oh, you know, I play board games, or, you know, we have a board game channel, people are like, they kind of like scoff. They're like, oh, what do you play, Monopoly? It's like, wait, no, sorry, you don't know anything about it. And whenever I have the opportunity to bring somebody in, Andrea, my current wife, my sister, you know, any other person along the street that I used to work with, I say, let me show you a game. I have a game for every single person, you know, whether it's a very, you know, short, like if they want to have like high luck or whatever, and I can get them kind of introduced into the hobby and just let them know there's more out there.
Yes.
So, and they don't scoff at it anymore. Then they have an understanding, you know. So I think it's cool. The one game that hasn't been mentioned on here that started it all for me when I was younger was Hero Quest. So that was the first dungeon crawler that I kind of fell in love with, and I just ran from it. And you know, a few years ago we went back to it and finally beat it, and it was like super easy to beat, you know. But it was just a lot of fun as a kid, and I had a lot of memories, you know, with my grandfather playing it and my aunt. So that was really sharp. And then as we got older, we got introduced into Warhammer and Warhammer 40K and Fantasy, and that's when I kind of saw that there was this whole tournament level to board games. And I'm a big competitive player. I like going to tournaments, so I've went to, you know, Vegas, Chicago, Maryland, doing all the tournaments for Warhammer, and wow, I got my butt kicked. I thought I was a good player. These guys were just a whole level above me, but it didn't stop me from wanting to get better. So I'm always looking for that when it comes to games. I currently still am, you know. X-Wings Miniatures came out, I got into that. And then recently at Gen Con, Fantasy Flight, which is probably the most well-known or biggest board game producer out there, they introduced the Star Wars Legion. So it is basically Warhammer meets Star Wars. That's going to come out, I think, in December. You know, because Games Workshop, who makes Warhammer, and Fantasy Flight, they were partners. Well, they recently broke within the last year, and everyone's wondering why. Probably had something to do with a few of these initiatives that Fantasy Flight wanted to do. So they're kind of creeping into their market. So that's a game that I'm going to definitely be interested in, and I'm sure I'll be showing you guys, of course, when it comes out, because I always get excited and, you know, need friends to play with and test it out.
I remember, not to go completely off track, but there was a game we played in your tournament where we totally were like going through a forest with multiple characters on the team, and like I was like an archer. Yep. And what game is that? That
is Descent.
Oh, and so, that was Descent. Okay.
Yeah, okay. That's a co-op version of Descent that we played.
Okay.
And to your point that you mentioned earlier, those Star Wars figures that I have, it's like a Star Wars version of Descent.
Yeah. Okay.
You have different classes, different items that you get. So yeah, and that's really where Hero Quest is like a dumbed down version of that, and they've obviously have gotten better over the years.
And I know you said Hero Quest was easy. I remember actually playing that with you guys. That might have been the first one that I played. That was at Ricky's house, I believe. I think I played that with you guys.
Yeah.
And what makes that game fun is taking the risk. Like, oh, I'm gonna go in there and get that treasure. Like, no, we could just leave. I'm the wizard.
Don't knock on the door.
Do
not
wizard.
Knock on the door.
I'm going to Magic Missile, and that is it. And it's basically game over. He's got like one hit point, but yeah, man, you guys introduced me to this whole realm, and there's a lot of fantastic stuff.
Yeah, and Doug, you actually brought up a good point of kind of where this whole thing started with us taping games. At least is we started a tournament, I guess, with I think 8 of us all started, and we just played a bunch of different board games, and we gave each other points depending on how well we did in standings, and then I think it might have started with Descent and Robinson Crusoe. We started taping our games just for something for us to share with our friends and, you know, the other team, and got to see what the other team did. And then it kind of evolved to really what we're doing today on, you know, on the board game playthrough side of Hit Point Gaming. So it was that's how we all started. We're on our way. We're doing well. I enjoy it.
it is really fun. So Corey, if I know we already talked about some of the things